I said, how you doing today? How you doing today? Y'all already know I am your host, Lacey G. Souldier Turner, and today I got a very special guest with me. I have the honor of talking with a powerhouse in the world of costume design and wardrobe styling for like over a decade. She has been one of the most creative minds, helping shape the visual language of some of the most acclaimed films out and television series of our times, from like Jordan Peele's Get Out to every installment of the Hunger Games. Her eye for detail and her gift for building authentic story driven looks have earned her a respectable place in this industry. Her work spans from every genre to like contemporary, sci-fi, fantasy, action, comedy, thriller, period, just everything. Her designs have brought life to projects from networks like FX, BT, Amazon Stars, Disney Plus, USA. I could go on and on and on and on and on. You know what I'm saying? But this woman has been doing a lot of grateful things, and she's just powerful. So we're gonna get to learn a lot about her today. So without further ado, I want to welcome to the platform the wonderful, amazing, talented Jaclyn Banner. Welcome to the platform.
Hello, how you doing? Thank
You doing
you.
okay?
That was an
So
amazing intro.
you deserve it. See,
I
so
need to
look,
carry you around with me everywhere I go. I like that.
let's get it. But yeah, I
Yeah.
met Jacqueline. You know what I'm saying? She was in St. Louis. We did a film together. They've been promoting and talking about it in an interview. And that's called Jacob B78.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was an interesting story on even how I got the role. But you know what I'm saying?
We'll
It's a
have to
good.
talk about it. I heard a little tidbit. I didn't hear, the full story, but I'm just like,
Oh yeah,
okay.
yeah, yeah. I'm in a state of shock today still, but you know. So before we even get into the question, you was in St. Louis. How did you enjoy St. Louis while you was here?
Oh, it was cool. Actually, it was my first time in St. Louis. So I was really excited to come, and then one of my good girlfriends had moved there a little over a year ago. So I did have, a familiar face there, but I mean, it was a great experience, I mean, of course, working a lot. I had a little bit of downtime. So when I wasn't working, I was trying to like rest, as much as I could. But I also, because of my job, I was able to get out and see a lot of the city. But, good people, great food, and I did get to see the arch, and that was amazing, So I did get a few little IG photo moments, down there before I left. But it was a good experience. I definitely would love to come back to St. Louis.
Okay, okay. So let me let the people know a little bit about you. Where were you born and raised, and how was your upbringing as a child?
Oh my goodness. So I was born in Boston, Massachusetts. Um, and my parents got divorced when I was really little, and my mother got remarried, and he was in the military. So we moved around, a lot, from New York to Puerto Rico, Mississippi, and then finally landing in Atlanta. And I mean, what can I say about my upbringing? I was raised by a single parent, very strong woman. I think that, the women in my family are I just come from a very, long line of strong minded women, entrepreneurial women, and there's women that just hold their family down and take care of business, So I think, my mother, I love my mother. We have a great relationship. She did the best that she could. But my brother and I, we spent a lot of time alone. We were like latchkey kids, So in a sense, we kind of like raised ourselves. And so, still being very respectful of my mother and, everything that she had to do. But, we had a lot of freedom, and so I got a lot of chance. I got the chance to just really experience life, and learn a lot about life like on my own. But then also taking in, different, knowledge and experiences from like the people and my family and friends, like, that were around me, So, I mean, I wouldn't really change anything about, how I grew up. It helped shape me to the person that I am today, you know. Um, but I mean, we weren't rich, we weren't poor, either. But I had a good life. I can't say that I didn't.
Okay. So I saw that you began your career in wardrobe styling before transitioning into film design. What pushed you towards the world of storytelling through clothing?
So it's interesting, right? Because I never really saw myself like working in the TV and film industry. I always had a love for fashion and clothes and styling. And so my overall goal was that I wanted to be a big fashion stylist. I wanted to be a big fashion editor. Like, I'm a magazine fanatic. I collect them. I have, I mean, like, 6 foot long bins full of magazines to this day, and every time I move, they're like, what is in this bin? I'm just like, those are my magazines. Do not touch my magazines, because I collect them. I love them, like Honey from back in the day and Sway,
Oh
like those are
yeah,
some of like my
yeah.
favorite ones. But also, of course, Harper's Bazaar and Elle, in Vogue. But I was like in love with magazines. So I wanted to be a big fashion editor, right? So I actually did an internship with W Magazine in New York. And I said, okay, this is what I want to do. This is it. But at the time, I was going to school to get my associate's degree in fashion merchandising. And when I went to New York and, went back to New York and interned with W Magazine, they said, you're great, but you really need a bachelor's degree, even for like an entry level assistant job. Like, so I'm like, okay, well, let me just go back to school and get my bachelor's degree, which is what I ended up doing. And I got my bachelor's from Georgia State in communications, concentration in print journalism. But then I also did my minor in textile apparel design because I still had a love for clothes and fashion.
Mhm.
And I didn't move back to New York. I ended up staying in Atlanta and started like styling music videos, assisting on music videos, and also styling some of them myself, working on like fashion shows. And at that time, I think Atlanta was like on the cusp of becoming like a big entertainment, industry. I mean, it had like the music side, right? Because you had like So Def and Jermaine Dupri and,
Yeah.
Outcast, but there really wasn't a huge fashion presence here. And I didn't really feel like I could really make a career out of it because, people always want you to do something, but they don't want to pay you for your work, And I'm like, exposure doesn't pay the bills. You know what I'm saying? So I went back to New York for New York Fashion Week. I can't remember what year it was. And I connected with some people, ended up doing a couple of commercials while I was there, hooked up with some people, and they're like, just come, move here. We got you. We work all the time. And so I'm just like, okay, well, it's not, the magazine world, but commercials, are great too. It's great money, big projects, short amount of time, a little bit less work, but, great. You can make a great living off of it. And so I'm like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. So I came back to Atlanta, and one of my friends was actually working at Tyler Perry Studios. He was one of their costume designers. His name is Ronnie Green. And he asked me to come and shop for him. And I'll be honest, like I've told this story a few times. And then I was at a film festival earlier this year. I had the honor of speaking at the Light Reel Film Festival in DC. And I was speaking with one of the ladies there. And I don't know like how it came out, but I said, like people always ask me about my story, right? And I said, but the one thing and I don't know that I left it out on purpose, but I guess it's just a part of my life that I wanted to like not think about. But I also know like being in that place is kind of help what, you know, gave me the motivation to like move forward to try to like do some more things with my life. Like I worked in marketing like for years in corporate America, like before I delved into, working more in the fashion industry and working in the TV and film industry. But I was actually homeless. I was working for marketing. I was doing marketing for a company. I got let go. I was trying to like, make ends meet. And I was actually staying with Ronnie. So I was like either renting a room, or staying with a friend on the couch, like trying to like figure out like,
Yeah.
what I'm gonna do with my life, right? And so, like I said, I went to New York. I think I probably spent like the last little bit of my money, doing that. I'm like, okay, I made these connections, and okay, now it's time for me to go. And then, coming back, and he's like, hey, I need a shopper. You have a great eye. Do you want to come work for me? And I'm just like, yeah. So like that is how I got into the business. I started out as a shopper. What was the show? I think it was For Better or Worse. It was one of the old. It was like an older TV series that Tyler Perry did. I don't think that he doesn't do that one anymore. But at any rate, so I started shopping. That's how I got my start in the industry, And from there, I still was like doing little styling things. And obviously, I never, made the move back, to New York. But I ended up staying and just like networking and moving my way through the industry. So like that is how I got my start. And a lot of times when I'm out, people always want to ask, they're like, hey, like, what do you like, how do I do what you do? I want to do what you do. Like it must be so fabulous and amazing and glamorous. You get to work with celebrities and you get to dress them. And I'm just like, that is a part of my job. It's a lot
Yeah,
more than just
yeah,
that. And here's the thing, celebrities are people just like me and you. You know what I'm
facts,
saying?
facts,
And albeit a lot of them, they have more problems than the rest of
facts,
us. But like Biggie said, more money, more problems. You know
facts,
what I'm saying?
facts.
But people don't see that. They don't see the hard work and the grind. I mean, you were on set. You see how early we
Yeah,
are and
facts.
what it takes to like get the day going.
Yeah,
So started out shopping, and then when I wasn't shopping, I would be like what they call a BG costume, a background costumer, where I would dress the background, and I love doing that because I got that was like my way of like designing the background. And the designers that I worked with at the time, they really trusted me. I didn't really have to get too much approvals from them, and so I would either shop or I would BG costume. And then I did that for a few years, and then a designer that I was working with as a shopper, Frank Helmer, he gave me my first chance as ACD, assistant costume designer. And from there, did more projects as an ACD and then started designing, my own projects, being the department head, So I've been in the business, what's this, 2025, probably since about 2010, I think.
look at that
Yeah.
longevity.
And I started designing probably like around 2016, I think. So
I
yeah.
like, I like that
Yeah. So like
longevity.
my path was a lot faster, I think, than some people, Um, and I guess I can only attribute that to God. I've been very blessed and fortunate to have some really really great opportunities. And a lot of people are like, oh my gosh, you've done this, you've done this. I'm like, yeah, but I'm like, I still have so much more. I still have a long way to go. I feel in levels of you know where I've seen other people's career go. And everyone's path is different,
Facts,
but like I said, people always ask, like, how'd you get into it and how do you do it and how do I do it. And I'm like, everybody's story is different. Some people
different.
start as
Everybody.
PAs,
Yeah,
some people, I know people that came in the business as a PA, like had one job as a PA, and then
yeah,
because they met the right person, they gave them the opportunity to like ACD a project. And it's like, wait, like you missed all of these steps, and it doesn't mean that they didn't necessarily deserve it, but I feel like there's something to be said about getting in and working from the ground up and learning the department and all the different positions, because even though I'm at this place in my career, I'm a costume designer. I still consider myself to be an eternal student because every show that I'm on, I'm learning something different. I'm learning something different about the job, about how to do something, how to like thinking creatively in different ways. Also, I learned things about myself, in
yeah.
terms of like how to maneuver and like how to deal with people. Because I mean, the job essentially, for the most part, it's the same. There's like basic foundational things
Facts.
that happen on each show, but each show is different because there's different people, there's different personalities, and even being a costume designer is not just about creating these looks for these characters, and trying to tell the story through costume. But I'm managing a department, I'm managing a budget, I'm managing expectations, I'm managing personalities,
Facts.
like there's a lot that goes into it. It's not just about playing dress up.
Yeah,
you know
like it's crazy you said it. 'Cause like you said, when people like, how did you do this? Because I write and direct films also, and I've acted a little bit, but I have friends who this is their life acting. You know what I'm saying? And all they have is like extras and background roles. So they be like, how did you get into film acting? I'm like, it's God, what's for you is for you.
yeah,
So,
I
yeah,
mean,
so it's no way like you said, there's no like right way to tell a
yeah,
person how to do it,
yeah,
Uh,
it's not black and white. It's a very gray area,
right,
and I just tell people that want to do this I mean, right now is a very interesting time too, right? Because like after the strike, like work has slowed down in this country tremendously, you know. Um, you know, the strike happened, it happened for 6 months, and everyone thought that the work was just gonna like ramp back up the way that it
Yeah.
did after the pandemic. But, you know, they said, okay, well, basically, and this is my interpretation of what happened, you know, like don't quote me as this being fact. I just know that this is what I have seen. You know, they're like, hey, okay, great, you know, we'll meet the demands or most of them, but we're going to take the work elsewhere, you know. So like a lot of the work has gone to Canada, a lot of the work has gone overseas, you know. But I do feel that come the beginning of the year, quarter 1, quarter 2 of 2026, I think that you know, there is going to be more work, you know, coming back to the stage, you know. I mean, and even Missouri, because literally I was home for like a week, maybe a little over a week before I got the job in St. Louis. I was in Kansas City, Missouri. So I've been in Missouri for the past three
And you
months.
you a native now. You a native now. Come on.
I feel like it. I feel like it. I feel like it. Yeah, because you know, I went to Kansas City. It was like the first week of August. I came back mid September. I think September 20th. And then I left and came to St. Louis on September 30th. And I got back home November 6th or 7th. You know, so I've been in Missouri. So Missouri has something to say. Missouri, you know, I think, you
That's like
know,
we
they're like,
on
we're going
Jaclyn
to
Banner.
compete too.
Look, let me ask you this, Jaclyn.
Yeah.
How did your background in styling like shape the way you approach building the character's look?
I think so I get this asked a lot, right? Like, "Oh, you're a TV stylist." And I'm like, "No, I'm not a TV stylist. I am a costume designer, you know." And there are TV stylists like let's like, you know, like talk shows, you know. Um the people that dress them, you would call them TV stylists. You know, they're styling someone for, you know, they're creating a look for, you know, an event or a TV show, photo op, whatever the case may be. But, you know, as a costume designer, you know, we are creating this character, right? And we're helping to tell the story. And costumes do play a big part in that. But then there's also, you know, hair, makeup. There's also the production design. You know, there's all of these different elements that play a part in helping to tell this story, right? But with styling, um, I would say that it's, you know, the attention to detail, I think across the board. I think that that is a big, you know, similarity. I mean, and there are some shows that as a costume designer that you do get to be a little bit more stylized, right? There is a little bit more of a styling aspect to it, you know. And I think with that's my husband, shout out my husband walking in the background.
The little husband.
Look, I'm trying to turn the cameras that way.
Like, the little husband.
You know, no, but you know, there are similarities, but there are, you know, major differences, you know, because the costume design, like I said, there are times when you get to be a little bit more stylized, and it is a little bit more, and it is more about the fashion, right? Like you look at a show like, you know, what was it, Empire back in the day, you
Yeah.
know, very stylized. You know, even when I did Kingdom Business, that was a very like stylized show. You know, All's Fair that's on Hulu right now. I mean, the costume design is amazing, you know, on that show. But you know, it's very, very stylized. But then you look at a show like, let's say, Walking Dead, or
Yeah.
you know, where it's not about fashion. You
Yeah.
know, like it's these people are in survival mode, and so you know the clothes, you know, the costumes reflect that. You know, and then you look at a show like the Gilded Age, you know, where everything is custom built. It's a period piece, you know. And even though the, you know, the costumes are very similar because that was the style, you know, during that time period was like 1860s, 1870s, you know. But the differences in the characters, you look at the fabrics, you know, and the type of like the way the garments are made and the different styles, you know, of these garments that kind of help tell, you know, who the characters are, who has money, who has, you know, less money, you know, things like that. So, you know, as a customer, like you're looking at all of these things, right? And essentially it is the director's vision, right? Like on a film, it's the director that the costume designer is working one-on-one with. On a TV show, it's, there's many hats, many chiefs, right? And everyone has an opinion, so um there's a there's a lot more challenging of an approval process, where the director, it's one-on-one, and if you work with a director before, then they trust the costume designer. And most of the time, if you're in that situation, they'll let you kind of like have creative freedom, like whatever you want to do, Jaclyn, like just do it, like I trust you. But on a TV show, especially like a new show, the first season of a show, like they're very, enthralled in how the story plays out and how everything looks. And it's the producers, the writers don't necessarily have too much of a say. It just depends also too, like what their position is. You might have a writer that's a showrunner. You might have a writer that's also a producer. I worked on a show where I had to send approval pictures, so basically like you do the fitting and then it has to be approved, and a lot of people think that the costume designer has the final say. And in some instances we do, but a lot of times it has to be approved, and either that's the director, that's the producer, on an episodic, a TV series, there's a different director pretty much every episode because they want to kind of have a different feel. So it's never really the same director, for a whole like series, like episode 1 through 5, like it's going to be a different person each time. And sometimes they do have a say, they might have little notes and things about how they want things to look and how they, certain colors that they may want to use, things like that. But it's a whole approval process, and the costume designer does not always have the final say. So, you watch something and people are like, oh, why did she put her in that? So I always say, why they put them in that? I don't understand that, and I've noticed now, like the audience really does pay attention to the costumes. They pay attention to a lot of things. Like even my husband, like when we watch something and he'll like, I think it's my occupational hazard, but he's picked up on it. He's like, why they put her in that? Well, that doesn't make sense. Well, I mean, she just had that on. That's not that's not what she had on a second ago. Like they messed that up, So
you looking at it, you looking.
Yeah. The audience, they do pay attention. And so, the costume designer does not always have the final say. So I always say, like, whatever I'm going to submit as a costume designer, like I want to be okay with whatever it is, because I've done it before where I always submit like 3 to 4 pictures, no more than that, like per like look, right? Per change, based on the scene or whatever's happening. And then, give an explanation as to why I feel like this works, or why I feel like if they say, well, we like this, I'm like, well, that one really doesn't work because sometimes I'll submit the pictures for like a particular scene and they'll see the other pictures and they say, well, I really want to use change 3 from scene 12. I really want to use that over here, then I have to explain why. And sometimes I win and sometimes I don't, but I always try to make sure that whatever I submit, that I'm okay with it. If they don't choose like our top choice, because even like in my fittings, like I'll talk with my actors about, what we like, what we don't like, and not like in terms of like personal taste, but like what works for the character, and why this works. And and we'll have our pick and like, okay, well, we like this, so we'll do this one. And before I used to put like our first choice number 1, and then they would always pick like number 2 or 3. We're like, that's not the one that we want, So now I kind of like put them in different orders, because it's like a psychology thing, right? It's like, okay, because you said it, I want to do something different, like you meet those kind of people too. And it's just like, well, that doesn't really work, but you just want to,
like I
whose belt is bigger kind of thing. And it's just like,
I had to do my five options on the Jacob be something.
yes. And so it also depends on what's happening in the scene. It depends on what the other people are wearing, because you don't want to have a scene where everybody's in the same color. I mean, unless it's supposed to be that way. Some directors are okay with that visually, and then other ones are like, no, like I need contrast, but then it also depends on the location, the set design. You don't want to put somebody in a blue shirt if they're sitting on a blue couch. You know what I'm saying? Unless it's really going to contrast. So like there's lots of different things that go into it. So when you sent your pictures in, right? I shared them with Jay Lee, and he's like, well, I like this one, I like this one. So tell him bring both of these. And we're like, okay, because on most shows, I don't even like I'm gonna dress everybody,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
of course sometimes on the smaller projects, we do have what we call our day players, not a part of like our main cast. We may have them bring in things. I may still buy a few things, kind of like fill in the pieces and spaces, like for things that they may or may not have.
mm.
But all of your options were great, and so he's like, yeah, I really like that orange vest, and we're like, okay.
And look, it was crazy. They was like, cause they was like, no logos, no pay. I was like, that's all I
Yes,
work. I was like,
yes,
I had the deal.
yes,
I was like,
yes.
that's all
You
I
know,
work.
be,
Yeah,
because all those things have to
yeah,
be cleared,
yeah, I
right?
know.
And
Yeah, I
because of
know.
the timeline and how fast things were moving, you know, we didn't really have the time to wait, to
Yeah,
send in and say, hey, can we
yeah,
use this? Because,
yeah,
even like on bigger budget stuff, like you'll see, like, they have to get approval to wear these things. And sometimes it's product placement where, we're given, clothing that we have to like push into, the costumes because there's a deal with the studio or there's a deal with the movie or whatever, to kind of like promote this product or promote this brand. But you do have to get permission, if you're not in a situation like that, that it's okay to use. And for the most part, it's normally okay as long as it's not being used in a derogatory way. Like
yeah,
you can't wear a Nike sweatsuit if you're going to go kill somebody. You know what I'm saying?
right.
They don't, they, they don't want that. You know what I'm saying? So the
Right.
safest thing is to be as logo less as possible.
Look, okay, look. So let me. So I saw you worked on, Jordan Peele's Get Out and the entire Hunger Games franchise. How did those like projects push your creativity or challenge your imagination?
Oh my goodness. So Hunger Games, definitely, I mean, and I just want to, preface, I mean, people can look at my IMDb, they can see that I was not the designer on those shows, but I did work on the series, right?
Mhm.
And, I think on one of them I was like a shopper, and the other ones I was a fitter, which basically it's like dressing the background or like dressing, big groups of people. And so because Hunger Games was, I mean, creatively, I mean, it was amazing project to work on because, there weren't any boundaries, like you could do whatever it is that you wanted to do. I mean, and we had like this huge like space, almost like a warehouse, just full of clothing that the designers pulled, from different like costume houses. I mean, we shopped, we bought things, it's like, anything that you like, it was like a designer's dream. It was like anybody that's a creative, because you have all of these resources and you have all these things at your hands that you can just do whatever. So like we're doing, it was like a group of us that was on the fitting team, and we're all like trying to like, well, I feel like we were trying to like compete with each other. We're like, okay, well, oh, she did that. Oh, yeah, that looks good. Okay, so I'm gonna do this instead. I'm gonna do this. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, I like how she did that, but I'm gonna do this. And it was like it was fun. It was a lot of fun. I mean, it was a lot of work. It was a lot of work because it's like a lot of people. You're talking
Yeah.
about 400 or 500 people, and we're talking about pre-fitting them beforehand. Because if you're trying to fit, on a day, most times if you have background, right? If you have like 10 to 20 background, or maybe even 50, you can sometimes dress them on the day. If it's something special like that, like you can't, because
Yeah.
you have to make sure that the clothes fit. You don't have time
Exactly.
to, fit
Oh,
all these
yeah.
people, and say, okay, well, let's try this. So you do these pre-fittings, and the pre-fittings would happen like days before we would actually shoot, and then you have to be very organized. That's another thing about working in costumes. Like you have to be like attention to detail and organization, and keeping everything together, because we would do the fittings, we you know send the pictures, the designer, I mean, God bless her, like that designing the Hunger Games, that whew,
Yeah.
that's no easy task. And so to you know design the principal costumes, and everything is like custom made for them, and then you still have to approve all of the background looks. So we would like get the pictures and print them and put on boards, and she would like, yep, I like that, I like that, I like that, I don't like that, I don't like that, I like this, I like that, and like, so it really kind of helped me in terms of moving forward and like doing bigger things and bigger projects, in terms of like how to be and like how like to organize things. And just my mind, I'm amazed at my mind sometimes. The things that I remember, and holding in my head. I remember I was doing Kindred, and the supervisor, she came up to me, she said, Jaclyn, how do you do it? I'm like, what are you talking about? She's like, you remember everything. She's like, how is that even possible? I'm like, I don't know. I, I don't know. It's a gift from
God.
God. That's all I can
Yeah, it was
say,
like it's God. Yes.
Yeah, because like I'm designing the costumes, but I'm also like I know like the schedule is on my mind. It's in my mind. I know it like the back of my hand. Just like you have to know the script like the back of your hand. Know what's happening every day. What's happening in the scene. If there's something special that needs to happen with the wardrobe, the costumes, in this particular scene, the background, thinking about fittings ahead, I have a meeting later, and fittings, I love the fittings. It's probably like one of my favorite parts of being a costume designer is the fitting, because that's where we're in there and we're creating the character, and I love it when an actor is like, whatever you want to do, Jaclyn. And I'm just like, yes, you know, because then you'll get those ones that are a little bit more challenging to work with, because um they have so they have a vision, right? I have a vision. The actor, may or may not have a vision. The director obviously has a vision, right? And my job is to kind of marry all of them, right?
Gotcha.
And you do want your actor to be involved, in the process, because you're helping them, shape this character,
Okay.
and they have to feel that what you're doing in the fitting fits with the character that they're playing in their mind, and because they also have discussions with the director, about the character and different arcs and what's happening and who the character is and why they're this way and different things like that. So, the costumes play a major part in that. So I love the fitting process, and I love when an actor is involved in that way. But I don't like when they're like, well, I don't like that. I wouldn't wear that. I'm like, no, you would not. You're absolutely
Exactly.
right. You would not wear this. But
But
guess
your
who would?
character will.
Your character is going to wear this. And
Right.
so this is what we like, and this is what the director would like. And so like it's a whole process. So it's not an easy thing, but I would say like that is like my most favorite part, because we are creating the character, and then I'm also building that trust and that rapport with the actor, because they may feel one way coming in, and then when they leave they're like, okay, well, I understand that. I'm with
Yeah.
you. I'm with you, so I
Yeah.
like when those moments happen too, but there's like so many different moving parts that you just have to be on it. You just have
Yeah.
to be on.
Yeah. So look, is there a particular like moment or wardrobe piece from any film that you work on that you're most proud of?
I would say, so I love period pieces. Like, I mean, I've done, my range as a costume designer, I've done a lot of different kind of projects, and I really, really I admire that fact, because there are some people that, oh, I only like to do this, or oh, I only do this, but I, I feel like if I'm a costume designer, which I am, creatively, I should be able to do anything, right? And if I don't know how to do something, then I'm going to put the right people around me that's going to help me to make it happen. But I love period pieces, and
Mm.
so Kindred and which was on FX Hulu, was still on there now. It was a limited series. We were
Hey,
hoping
look,
that it would go to
hey,
season
look,
2.
I'm gonna go back and I love this series. It's crazy that when I met you, because that's one of my favorite series when she was going back and forth from the slavery
Oh,
stuff. Like I love that series. I'm gonna go back and watch it again because I watched it when it first came out some years ago, but I haven't watched it since. So I'm gonna go back and watch it.
yes, no, and it was such an honor, right? Because Octavia Butler, I mean, she was such an amazing, amazing author, novelist, whichever title that you want to give her. And so this was the first of her projects that, her book that was made into, an adaptation for TV, right? And of course, there's a lot of criticism, and there's skeptics about, oh, like it was like this in the book. Of course, it's always going to change a little
Of
bit
course,
for
yeah.
TV or film, but just being a part of that project and like help bringing this story to life, because she does have, Octavia Butler, she does have her audience, she does have her fan base, but for the people that aren't familiar with her too, it was just, you know, bringing more awareness, to how, her creative genius, because she was definitely ahead of her time,
Yeah.
as an author, but that project, probably like one of my most favorites, it's probably like my number one
I
because
love it.
it was a long project, which I love. A lot of people are like, oh, I like the little short ones. I don't like working on anything for too long. And I'm just like, I like a job.
Right.
So the longer, the better for me.
Right. Yeah.
Um,
Right.
but
You know,
no, it was it was great because I got to travel a lot, sourcing different fabrics. I had a tailor shop where I worked with the illustrator. I mean, I know how to sketch a little bit, but like that's not my forte. I'm gonna be on, like, that's not my forte. Do I know how to make a garment from scratch? No, I don't. But I know how I want it to be, and I
yeah.
know about draping, and I know about fabric selection, and the right fabric to use for what it is that I want to do, and working with my tailor shop, because I don't have to know how to do everything. I need to have great people around me,
Right. Yeah.
because it's not a one woman show. Like, I can't do a show without having a crew, and a great crew is chef's kiss. And so I had a really, really great tailor shop that helped bring all of these designs to life. So that was probably like my most favorite. And then Rosa Parks, I mean, that was an older one that I did. It was a movie I did for TV1, and did a lot of custom bills there. So anywhere I get to, and even with like contemporary shows, I still find a way to like create something, because I think, I'm not gonna say that anyone can go in a store and shop, but I don't like every time you watch something, you're like, oh, I know where they got that from.
Right.
That
Yeah.
came from
Right.
such and such.
Yeah.
Like, as a designer, like, even if I buy something, I'm gonna remix it, rework it to make it look a little bit different, so that way I'm putting my creative spin and my creative talents on it. So I would say those two are probably like my top parts. I mean, and I enjoy Kingdom Business too, because then, being that I, come from a styling background, anytime that I get to kind of bring a fashion element to something, it's always, I
Yeah.
like to do that. So like that was a good one too. I mean, I enjoy all the projects that I've worked on, because I do feel that each of them, taught me something, and just made kind of like pushed me, creatively, to think of things in a different way, and how to do things in a different way. Like I said, every show I'm learning something. I'm never someone that feels like I know everything. And if I don't know, like, I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to find a way to do it. I'm not one of these people like, oh, I know how to do everything. Like, I know people like that. I'm like, no, you don't. You don't know how to do everything.
It's fine. It's
It's
art.
okay. And guess what? It's okay. It's okay. You don't have to know how to do everything, but figuring it out, I feel like that just kind of like, it just makes you better at what you do, you know?
What was there any like wardrobes that you wish you can go back and revamp that you weren't proud of?
Ooh! I
Yeah.
think I think that there are always those moments, even in the things that I just named, like watching, and I'm like, okay, I know what happened in the moment, and why things may or may not have turned out the way that I, you know, essentially wanted them to. But gosh, there is one, but I'm not going to name it. I don't even have that. I don't even have that credit out there.
Okay,
Okay. Because
okay.
I'm just
Well,
like,
it's like I ain't even got the
girl.
credit, so I ain't got.
Yeah. Well, because the thing was, right. Okay. So I'll be very honest. I'm a very transparent person. So I was doing two shows at once. Right.
Okay.
And I did not put the enough energy and time into one of them. I really relied on my crew that was there, and I was back and forth a lot, and communicating with them via text and pictures, and whatnot. So I was being pulled in two different directions. And from then on, I'm like, okay, this may not be something that I can do, but I didn't want to lose the opportunity. But that was also a teaching point for me, is like, you can't do everything, Jaclyn, and knowing that there were like demands on, different demands for both of the shows, right? And so um moving forward, if that's something that I'm going to do, because I've done it a couple of times, and it hasn't always been that way. But I just had to make a decision about what it is that I'm going to do, and if I am going to do it, then making sure that I have the right team so that way they can help bring this, they can help make it happen, but it was a learning experience for sure. Yeah.
Okay. So look, you spoke on this a little bit. I want the people to really understand this. So
Okay.
uh what is the biggest difference between designing for like I guess an intimate thriller like Get Out versus a world building franchise like The Hunger Games?
Okay, so Get Out, I was the ACD, and my good designer friend Nadine Haters, she was the designer, and there were so really I was following her lead, right, and what her and Jordan Peele wanted to do, and even working on that, I don't think that we knew the magnitude of how big that film was going to be, um, and that's why I say like I don't think that I'm too big to work on certain things, you know what I'm saying? Or like certain projects are like beneath me because you just never know. It might be that thing that is going to, you know, take me to the next level. You never know the exposure,
Right.
you never know what is going to happen. And so, they had this idea, with using certain colors when they were doing what was the scene? It was the scene where they were essentially like bidding on getting the black people's body parts, you know what
Mm.
I'm saying? But it was kind of like done in an understated way. And so they really wanted to use a lot of reds, and black and white. And I honestly, because it was so long ago, I don't remember the context behind it, but I do remember like shopping and trying to find like these certain color palettes and these certain pieces for each of these actors and for the background actors. And so, I mean, like I said, I can't speak to like what her thoughts were in terms of like what the conversation was between her and Jordan Peele. I just know that like I said, I was just following her lead, on that. I mean, and by the time I got there, because she had did a lot of prep in New York and LA before, because we shot that movie in Alabama. It was in Fairhope, Alabama. There was a small segment that was in New York, and the whole crew didn't go for that. But the majority of the movie was shot in Alabama. So after she did all of her prep and then she got to Alabama is when she called me and was like, hey, like I need you to come down. I need you to come work with me on this project. So a lot of the shopping had been done. But just certain things like I said, like once we got there and working with like particular scenes and what Jordan wanted it to look like, like I said, the director, how he sees things in his mind is, that's our job to translate that, but I also think that, being a costume designer or any department head, that the director, they do trust you, to bring, your creativity, to bring your knowledge, to bring your experience to the project to kind of help them. Because sometimes they'll think that they want something and then you'll show them and then they're like, well, I don't really know that that's what I want. And then you show them, okay, well, what about this? And they're like, oh, I like this. I didn't think of that because, they're the director, like they're directing the whole movie, right? Like there's so
Yeah.
many, as you know, you're a director
Yeah,
too. You know what I'm saying?
of
Like
course.
you don't really want to think about, okay, what someone's gonna wear or how they're gonna wear it.
Right,
Like you
yeah, your mind is all on other things.
yeah,
Gotta
yeah.
make
So you're
sure.
gonna hire a costume designer to worry about that. You don't want to worry about, the prop that's supposed to be in the scene. Like you're gonna have a
Right,
discussion about it, but it's like it's not gonna be on you as a director to go
right,
out and like find these things and make these things happen. You know what I'm
right,
saying? Like you're gonna hire the people that have the knowledge and the wherewithal to make it happen, So I think that, when you find a good director or not necessarily a good director, but when you find a director and he has his vision and he hires the team around them, essentially that's what our job is. Like we're helping to bring, you know, your vision to life,
right. Right.
Yeah.
So let me say this. So you contributed to like, fan favorite series like Creep Show, the Miss Pat Show, and Kingdom Business. So what shifts creatively when you're designing like for I think you mentioned this too for episodic television versus like feature films.
Well, I don't necessarily feel like there's a difference
Mm.
in the two. I mean, the difference is in terms of like the timeline and like how fast or how much time you have to make something. I think in the film world, well, now films are being shot a lot faster. Most of
Super
them are
quick,
being
yeah.
done anywhere. If you Tyler Perry, he's gonna do a film in 5 days. You know,
Facts.
but
Yeah, I
if it's
heard Strong. Yeah, they said
yeah,
Strong was dead quick.
yeah, and I got the chance. I was ACD
Yeah.
on that project. Rayonda Vereen was the costume designer, and Brianna and I go way, 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 way back. So I'm happy she's like his main designer, over there. And like I said, I'm not too big or too small to do anything. If I'm not working as a designer, and if I have a designer friend that needs a shopper, or they need an ACD, like, I'm gonna do it. And then if I'm available, I'm available. If I'm not, I'm not. I'm going to be doing my own thing, because I like to work. I mean, there are certain things that I'm just not going to do,
Yeah.
but you know, shopping or ACDing for any of my designer colleagues, like, I don't have any problem, doing that, because I know how to play my position, and I know what I can bring to the table to help make your job and your life, a lot easier. But nowadays, most movies are like 15 to 20 days, and it depends on the project, how much prep time they want to give you, because sometimes they'll give you a lot of prep time, but then they don't even have the cast. So then you're still rushing, I'm just saying, like, you're
Yeah.
still rushing, like, you have 3 weeks of prep, right?
Yeah.
And they don't have the cast. So it's like, well, what are you, like, how much, what are you really prepping?
Yeah.
Because, you might have one or two people. So you shop them out, and now you're waiting for the other cast. So then you're like trying to like filter in like background stuff, or maybe this is the time that I have that I can actually like be more creative and actually like create, build custom, costumes, as opposed to just buying everything,
Yeah.
um so it really just depends, it depends on the prep time. It depends on, when they give you cast, you
Yeah.
know, and because a lot of times they'll give you cast and you might get them like a day or two before. And then it's like, whoa, it's like, a mad dash to make sure that they have, clothes. You know what I'm saying? And if, yeah, no, seriously, seriously, and like I said, most times, like, I'm gonna make sure that I have or I can't really make sure, but if the budget allows, then I'm going to clothe everybody. Like, I'm going to buy everything,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But on Jacob Beats Up Nate, the timing of it all, was a smaller budget project, so it's like, okay, we need you to wear your own clothes. And this is what we're looking for.
Yeah.
What do you have that fits that,
Yeah.
and then from
You see, and
there,
you still designing because you got to be like, oh, I don't like that. Oh, I don't do that. You know what I'm
yeah.
saying?
Or if you don't, which I had to do, with a few people on that project, they didn't necessarily have, what they sent in would not work. So then I had to go back to production, like, hey, like, I need money because I have to go buy them clothes. They don't have the right things. You know what I'm saying? So, but most times, I tried not to be in those situations. I like to, shop and design and build the costumes myself for all of the cast, even the background, like, we'll have them bring things, but then, we'll still have a stock of things that we can use to kind of filter in, the holes of things that they may or may not have, depending on the look, depending on, how the director wants them to be. I've had shows where even like the producers would come and they'd be like, hey, like, does that background, do they have something different, or can we put them in something different? We want to feature them, or we want to do something different, or, things like that, um, but I think, getting back to your question
Yeah.
about TV series and episodes, I
Yeah.
just think that it's the timeline. Films, you do normally, you have a little bit longer
Yeah.
time to prep, especially if they have the cast in play beforehand. Then you have time to communicate with them. You have time to, shop and fit them accordingly. In a TV series, it is a lot more faster paced because, like I said, it's a different director each episode, and each episode, it shoots in 7 to 10 days, right?
Mm.
So while you're shooting this episode in 7 to 10 days, you're also prepping the next episode that's going to be happening right after that in the next 7 to 10 days. So it's like a constant flow of movement, and just being on it. And like I said, with episodics, there's like so many more people
Yeah.
that have to see it, and everyone's not, most of the time they're not on the same page,
Right.
So I remember on one show, I'm like, look, I need to know who has the final say because I would do the fittings, I would send the pictures in, and one person would be like, "Oh yeah, I like this for that," and the next one would be like, "Well, no, I like this for that," and we're like, "Okay, well, which one is it going to be?" You know.
Yeah.
So then it was like, okay, well, the one of the female producers. So it was like I want to say it was like 4 or 5 people on the approval email chain that I had to send the pictures to, and after a while, two were like our main writers. And so they just kind of like gracefully bowed out. They're like, "Oh, we're
Yeah.
gonna let
Yeah. We're gonna let
the
y'all
other
do
we're gonna let
that.
the other three decide." And then the third one was like, "You know what? I'm gonna let the other two decide. I'm just gonna." So I'm like, "Okay, well, between these two, who? Because I'm like, she's saying one thing, he's saying another thing. Like, what is it gonna be? And then I had this one director that was on the project, and that he wanted to have the final say. And one of the EPs came to me, and she said, "Jaclyn, do not listen to him." Because he is not going to be here for the whole show.
Like, did not
These
listen
two
to
are. So it's whatever they want,
Yeah.
And so I'm like, well, I'm gonna do. That's what I'm gonna do. Like these are the people that are paying my paycheck. Like, yes, he's a director. But he's only here for a few, couple
Yeah.
of weeks, and then
Yeah.
he's out. I still got to deal with these people for the rest of the show. And we were on this show for like 3-4 months. So,
Yeah.
so then she said, okay, well, the female producer is gonna be the approval for the ladies, and the male producer is going to be the approval for the male cast. And so I'm like, okay, that was a lot better, But every now and then, you know, the female producer would try to like, weigh in on the men stuff. And he was like, no, like we have this agreement in place now. We can't be driving Jaclyn crazy. Like we got to give her an answer. And it has to be that. Okay. And so, just having that open dialogue is, it's key, because, like I said, there's so many different moving parts. And like I said, the episodic, you're shooting an episode in 7 to 10 days, and then you're also prepping the next episode in 7 to 10 days. So it's a lot more faster pace,
Gotcha.
But most times with episodic, you do have your main cast, you do have them, ahead of time. So I have the time, the prep time in the beginning to like think about each episode, because most times with the episodic, you'll get at least the first, few episodes. So that way, what's happening. You can kind of create, if there's different things that need to happen with their character in terms of their costume, like different arcs, then you have the time to think about that and kind of make those transitions happen throughout these episodes, and then you get the next ones. And so like it's constant flow of prep, whereas with the movie, like I said, you have a little bit more time because it's just one script. Of course there's going to be revisions, right? But you have a little bit more time with the film than you do with the episodic, most times. Yeah.
Look, look, we talked about this a little bit. One of my favorite films, Kindred. So, you earned a Black Real TV Award nomination. So, what did that project mean to you personally, and how did that nomination fit?
It was amazing because I had never been, so I've been on projects where there's been nominated for awards, but for me personally to be nominated for, my work, and it wasn't even something that, I'll be honest, I didn't even know about it. You know what I'm saying? Like, it just kind of like, I think I came across it on like Instagram, and I'm like, wait a minute, what? You know? And I was just like, oh my gosh, it felt amazing for someone to recognize, my talent.
Yes.
And I don't think that I know that I don't necessarily do it for the accolades, but when you get that recognition, it feels good, because there are times when you work on projects and you're going, and you don't always get the appreciation, and I will be honest, a lot of times in costumes we'll get the short end of the stick, where they don't want to give us the budget, in terms of department heads, costume designers, like we're paid less than some of the other department heads, but I'm like, but we're really making the show. I mean, and don't get me wrong, like each department, is needed to make the film or make the project, right? But I always say this, if you don't have clothes,
Facts.
then it's kind of like you're making a porno. And I don't think that that's what we're doing. Like, we're making a movie, you know. You can't have, you know, a period piece and contemporary clothing and you have 50s cars, but the people are not like, so like the costumes really, really make, you know, it really helps to make the movie. And a lot of times we get the short end of the stick where, you know, we're paid less than our other departments, you know, where our work is a lot more than some of these other departments, you know. And I'm not saying that the other departments don't work hard, you know, everyone has a job to do, but we have a lot of work that has to be done. You know what I'm saying? Like, from, you know, you reading the script, you're breaking it down, you know, there's continuity to make sure that, you know, we're not shooting in order, you know.
Right.
Um, so continuity is key, which is what I mean when I say like paying attention to detail and being organized, you know, thinking creatively, you know, if we're shooting a movie, you know, that it's supposed to be cold in the summertime, you know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
you got to
Like
drink and
different
make
like
sure they
that, or you're shooting
feel it.
like, so like Rosa Parks, right? Like we shot that movie in the summer, but the movie actually took place, it was December of 1955, which
Mm,
is cold, you know what I'm
yeah,
saying? It's winter. So like we're having to keep the cast comfortable with different things under their clothes, you know, so that way they're not like sweating
yeah,
profusely when
right,
they're wearing, you know, these heavy winter coats and clothes and things like that, you know. So like there's a lot of different things that go, you know, into play in terms of, you know, working in the department, you know what I'm saying? So there's a lot of work that goes into it, and they don't always want to give us the proper budgets, you know, they don't always want to give us the proper staff, you
right,
know, to make these things, you know. And not only that, they don't necessarily always want to, you know, pay equity is a huge thing, you know, it's a huge thing that we're always fighting for. You know, there's this thing called favored nations. And basically what that is that when you are hired on a project as a department head, they have to pay you what they're paying. Like, they have to pay all of the department heads the same. Like, their deals have to be the same. Because a lot of times the production designer is paid a lot more than the costume designer. The hairstyle, you know, the hair
yeah,
department head and the head makeup artist, they're paid a lot more. You know, they have to be licensed. So I get that in a sense, but you know, they don't really have that much prep time the way that we do, you know, because like we're having to do so much more, but we're always getting, you know, the short end of the stick. So when we are recognized and appreciated for our work, you know, in terms of being nominated for certain awards, you know, it just makes you feel good about what you're doing, you know, because even like when you're going through something and you're in the thick of it, you're just like, oh man, like I can't wait for this to be over. And then when it's over, you know, it doesn't seem that bad because, you
yeah,
know,
right,
it's like, okay, it wasn't that bad. But it's like you
yeah,
don't really want to keep working that way, you know. I mean, and I feel like that it's that way with like different facets of your life. Like, you're going through something, and then when you come out of it, then you're like, okay, well, that wasn't that bad. I don't necessarily want to go through that again, but you
right.
know, at least now I know how to maneuver. But
Mm,
you know, we love what we do. So whenever we're recognized, you know, for our craft, you know, and all of the hard work, you know, and dedication that we put into something, it feels good. It feels amazing, you know. And that was like my first time being nominated for an award for costume design. Like I said, I worked on projects where they've been nominated for different awards, you know, like Miss Pat show.
yeah,
I think it was Mary Lou Belly got nominated for director for like one of the episodes. You know,
mm,
the Rosa Parks movie, it was nominated for NAACP Image Award, I think a limited series or TV movie or something like that. You know, that movie was nominated. So I've been on projects where we've been nominated for different things, and it always feels good because then like
yeah,
the work overall is being recognized. But
yeah,
then when
facts.
you are solely
That's,
recognized
yeah,
for your work and your contribution to something, you know, it feels good. It feels good.
that's good. So let me ask you this: what keeps you motivated and inspired in the industry that's constantly shifting?
Oh my goodness. Just seeing the shifts and seeing all of the great work out there, and me wanting to, you know, be a part of that, and me saying, you know, I mean, like Ruth Carter is phenomenal, right? I think that she is probably like, um, you know, the goat, as people, you know. I mean, but she's not the only one, you know. I mean, you know, there's Francine Tanchuk, you know, I mean, there's so many, right? There's so many Black costume designers. And I mean, my mind is failing me right now, but when you see their work and you see the time that they, like, how long they've been in the industry, and it seems like they're just now getting their due. Like, they've been doing this for a long time, and they've like paved the way, for people like myself, to work in this industry, which we still considered minorities, right? Even though there have been different movements, where with DEI, and they're trying to be more inclusive, and there's more black shows, and there's more Latino shows, and there's more Asian shows. I just think that when I'm seeing all of these shifts, it just makes me want to be a part of it, even more, because I feel like the doors are, opening up, and there's like a broader scope of things that are happening, which means that we can kind of push the boundaries a little bit more creatively,
Yeah.
So, when I see someone doing something, I'm like, oh man, I wish I could do that, and it's not in the sense that where it doesn't come from a place of like jealousy
Yeah.
or anything like that, it's just like, if they can do it, I know that I can do it too, or
Yeah.
I'll see something and I'm like, you know what? Yeah, I would have done that differently.
Yeah.
I would have done it like this, but that's what makes us all so great, is because we have all of these, differences creatively, because if I'm up for a show and then someone else is up for a show, and what they presented, what I presented, are probably going to be different things. I mean, they should be different things. Sometimes you see things and it's like, so I interviewed for this show. I didn't get it. And then I watched the show. And I'm like, now what are the chances that that designer and myself, that we had the same idea about this character,
Okay.
And I don't think that that was the case.
Yeah.
They loved my boards. I had a great meeting,
Mm.
but I didn't get the job.
They were like, we're gonna use her ideas though.
Exactly. And it happens all the time. I'm a part of this costume design group. And we talk about this and about how it happens, and how, like, when we have these meetings, like, how can we protect our work, right? Like, trademarking it a bit. But this, I feel like there's only so much that we can do, because if someone wants to use something, they're going to figure out a way to do it. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can trademark, the hell out of your board and put your watermark and whatnot. But, look, Canva, you can go in Canva, you can take
Right.
all that
Yeah, you
away.
can remove watermarks and all.
there's, there's so many different things. I mean, I've been in a meeting before where, like, they'll have the assistant, and the assistant will be in the meeting, the director's assistant or producer, whoever's assistant will be in the meeting. And I see them like doing something with the computer. And in my mind, the first thing that I'm thinking, I'm like, they're screenshotting this. Because so I used to send them to my agency, right? I used to send my boards to my agency, so they would send them to, whoever I was having the meeting with beforehand. Then I stopped doing that. And then I would just present them myself. So that way no one had it,
Exactly.
But then I'm like, I felt like she was screenshotting
Like,
the boards. And I'm just like, it didn't feel right. And someone's like, how do you know that? I said, it's just an instinct. Okay. And women in our instincts, we be on point. So I was like, so I don't know that there's necessarily a way to protect it. And I just think that as a designer, if I get a job and then someone gives me someone else's boards or gives me a picture represent, like, I'm gonna know, like, that's not coming, like, that didn't come from me,
right.
And I think having integrity as a designer and not wanting to use someone else's work or their ideas, there's just a way that you have to do it. Because, I mean, maybe the director really, really liked it, but you have to have that conversation. I'm like, I can't do that. You know what I'm saying? Like, okay, well, instead of that, well, what do you think about this? It's still very similar. We can do this instead of this or whatever, But when I saw my ideas on the screen and they didn't hire me, I'm just like, wait a minute,
It took from
But it's like,
me.
it's not even worth the hassle of like trying to like, go after it like legally, because like I'm gonna spend more money trying to do
More
that. Like, what am
money.
I,
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying? Like, so those kind of things happen. But like I said, I just think that, having integrity as a designer, like, you're not gonna want to use someone else's designs. You're gonna want to do something like, so even with so the Miss Pat show, right? I came in at the end of the season. I want to say it was either season one, it was either episode 5 or 6. Um, and they were getting ready to shoot episode 5 when I got there, because I was replacing a designer, and they had already picked the look. So I'm like, okay, well, that's fine. But moving forward, like, this is what I'm going to do. You know what I'm saying? And there were some creative differences in terms of like how they wanted the cast to look. Um, and it doesn't mean that the designer before me, like, she did anything wrong. Like, it's all very subjective, right?
Mhm.
Because if, I may see something one way, of course someone else is going to see it another way, and it doesn't mean that the way that either of us see it is wrong, because we don't see it the way that the other person
Right.
sees it. It's all very subjective. So I'm not going to say that there was anything that she did wrong. I just think creatively excuse me, that there were some differences, and sometimes it doesn't always work out.
Mhm.
um but I'm like, I'm not gonna do what she did. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, I'm designing it now, so I'm gonna put my
Your
spin on
own
it,
spin on
you know? So
it. Okay.
yeah.
I like that. So let me ask you this. What advice would you give to like aspiring costume designers who probably want to build a career with as much range and depth as yours?
Oh my goodness. I just think that it's definitely about networking, right? I mean, you have to have an in, you
Mhm.
know, um, in some capacity. And I think that if you meet a costume designer and you want to work with them, then, you know, first of all, the person has to be willing to give you a chance, because there's so many people that want to do this. I mean, it's almost like the NBA, right?
Yeah.
There's only so many slots,
Yeah.
right? Everybody can't make it in. Um, so it's about finding your in, whatever your in is. If you meet a costume designer, or if you meet someone that works in the business, and they're able to pull you in, you know, um, once you get in, I think being pleasant, positive, professional, I think those are the biggest keys, and being an asset, bringing something to the table. Because, like I said, so many people want to work in this business and have no idea. I did a panel with Bloomingdale's a few years ago, and afterwards there were these two young ladies that came up to me, and I actually gave them a chance. I brought them in as PAs on two different projects, but I brought them both in as a PA. I'm like, okay, well, come in as a PA. I outlined exactly what they would be doing, you know. Um, and when I was around with one of them, she was the most nice person. And then when I wasn't around, the crew would complain to me about her because her attitude was very bad. She had bad energy. She didn't want to do what she was asked to do. She didn't want to do anything.
Mm.
And then when I spoke with her about it, she was like, well, I thought that I was going to be coming in, shadowing you. I thought that I was going to come in and do what you do. And I said, no, ma'am. One, that was never the conversation. Okay. And even if you did come in and shadow me, there's no way that you could do what I do. Okay. What
Fact,
I do took years. You're not going to learn it on
fact,
one show.
fact.
What I brought you in to do was to bring you into the department so that way you could learn about the department. You could see how things work, do a good job at the job that you were given to do. Then on the next show, then I might think about having you do something else. You know what I'm saying? But you can't, it's all about your
Yeah,
attitude. You have
fact,
to have the
fact.
right attitude, and I
Yeah.
think a lot of times people want to come in and they want to be at the top instead of working their way up to
Yep.
the top, you
Yeah.
know and I think that that's very important. Like, whatever position it is that you have, you need to be good at doing that, and you need to be someone that people want to work around and people want to
Fact.
be around, and you have to be teachable. um Recently had the experience, and you know I was told that these people wanted to work with me.
Mhm.
And then when I'm working with them and I'm telling them about how things are and what they need to do, I was met with such resistance and defensiveness.
Mhm.
Um, and it's like, well, I know. And I'm like, well, no, you don't know. If you knew, then one, you wouldn't be doing it the way
Fact.
that you're doing it. Two, you wouldn't be asking me the questions that you're asking me. if you knew
Right.
what to do.
Right.
And if you don't know what to do, guess what? That's fine. You're here to learn. This is a new thing for you, and even if you have worked on some things before, like I said, every project is different. And what you're doing on a project is different, especially if you're working in a different capacity, than what you're working in on this particular project. So it's like you have to be humble.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, you have to be someone that people want to work around, because this business, is very small, but it's very big, and people talk.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, people like to talk about the bad more so than they do the good,
Yeah. Facts.
Um, and before, when I would try to bring people in, and if they didn't necessarily do a good job, I didn't want to like take away an opportunity from them. But then at the end of the day, I'm like, you know what? It's making me look bad, because I can't refer you or put you onto something. And then when I'm around, you're okay. And then when I'm not around, then, you acting up. It's
Mm-hmm.
like, who are you? Like, no,
Yeah.
you
Facts.
know? So I had to start, I'll be honest, I did kind of like hone back from like bringing people into the business and
Mm-hmm.
giving people opportunities, just because the ones that I did, they did put a bad taste in my mouth for, trying to help people. Not to say that I haven't, I mean, because I still do. I just think now, from those experiences, I'm definitely more picky,
Yeah.
about who I do that for, and once I see certain things, then I know, okay, yes, this can be a good thing, or no, this ain't gonna work. And, you know, I
And
gotta
what?
part with you,
Yeah.
because yeah, you can't have any cancer, you know what I'm saying? We gotta kill it. We
Yeah,
gotta kill it when
so you
we
ain't
see it.
lying about that. I said, look, when I was on set, everybody at the end, they was like, man, you been smiling all day. I was like, love it.
Yeah, yeah. Nobody wants to be around someone that is negative, or that they
It's
have
fact.
bad energy. You know what I'm
It's
saying?
fact.
Like,
It's
because I
fact.
mean, even coming in, like, let's say if someone does come in as a PA, right? Like, you're gonna be doing a lot of grunt work. Like, you're not
Fact.
gonna be, but you'll also see that
Mm,
our job, it is a lot of work. It's not what
fact.
you think it is. It's
Fact.
not just
Not
us
easy. Yeah.
stopping. Yeah, like it's a lot of work that goes into it. And so with the
Yeah.
other young lady, so like the first young lady that I was telling you about, I had to let her go. I'm like, well, I never told you that you'll be shadowing me. And even if you were, like, you still couldn't come in and do, like, you're not going to come in and PA
Fact.
one day, or PA for a show, and then the next show you're going to be designing it. Like, it doesn't
Fact.
work that way. It didn't work that way for me. It's not going to work that way for you. Like, have these things happen before? Yes. But then guess what? People fall on their face because they don't have the experience, and they don't know what they're doing. You know what I'm saying? And people lie about their experience and say, oh, well, I can do this, I can do that, I did that. And then you give it to them, and then it's like they don't know what to do, because they never done it. You know what I'm saying? So that young lady, I had to let her go. Um, Another young lady, her attitude was just wrong off the gate. And so I just had to nip it in the bud. I've referred people, that I've worked with on different projects to work on different things. And then if the report that I get back is bad, like, I'm not going to refer you anymore. If people want to know, well, why, and it's also like what you do on the job and how you are
Fact.
on the job. You know what I'm saying? And I just think that, like I said, being pleasant, professional, positive, being someone that people want to be around. Because I mean, let's face it, like when we're working these hours, like these are long hours that we're
Yeah.
spending with people, a set of people for a long period of time, over days, over weeks, over months. And you don't want to be with someone that you don't want to be around, or they're just negative, or they're up and down all the time. I mean, like, people, like, we all have lives that we live in, right? And there's all
Fact.
kind of
Yeah.
things that all of us are dealing with. But it's still a professional environment. It is a lot more lax because you're not wearing a suit and tie. You can wear
Fact.
pretty much whatever you want, you know but there's still, like, it's still a professional environment. You know what I'm
Fact.
saying? So you can't bring all of that stuff from the outside into it. I mean, and I understand people have like their good and bad days, and sometimes, you have a bad day, and that's fine, but every day can't be a bad day for you. Every day
Fact.
can't be a bad day. Then that
Facts.
means that you need to go take the time away to go deal with whatever it is that you've got going on, and come back later if you're allowed to come back, because a lot of times this industry is not forgiving. Like, if they
Fact.
have one bad experience with you, then
Yeah.
that's it. They're
Yeah.
not going to want to think about you or talk to you or bring you on, or anything like that, because you have already shown them who you are. Like I said, one bad day is fine, but several bad days, like every day you having a bad day,
You need to go seek therapy.
yeah, like, this ain't the place for you. This is not the place for you, because we have a job to do. and we're here for a long period of time. So we want to be able to, work with you. And I'll say this too, even about like interviewing, like as a costume designer, at first I felt like it was all about your experience, right? And sometimes it is, but a lot of times the meetings that you have are to see if the person can work with you. You know, what kind of person, like, and if you don't get it, it doesn't mean that you're a bad person. It just means like, what, that person's not my cup of tea. I don't think that I can work with this person, for this length of time. And it's not, like I said, it's not necessarily always about that, but I feel like that sometimes it is about that, because
Yeah.
the job is the job. And essentially, if you've designed one thing, you can design something else. Like if you directed something, you can direct something else, So like the job itself is pretty much the same, but they want to see, okay, well, is this someone, do they fit in with the culture of what it is that I'm doing? And sometimes you do and sometimes you don't, and like I said, it doesn't mean that you're a bad person, doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with you. Like I said, this business is very subjective, and the people that are working and the people that continue to work is because they're aligned with people that, one, have a lot of things going on. They like working with this person, they're familiar, there's a comfortability there, so they already know what to expect and what's going to happen.
Yeah.
So there's lots of moving parts, there's lots of it, but I just think, anyone that's coming into the business, whether you want to be a costume designer or a grip or a prop master or a set designer, any of those things, I just think that you just have to be humble, and you have to be a good person. You have to know what you're doing and be good at what you're doing. But people have to want to be around you. That's key.
Well, you gave some great advice. You gave great advice. So, all
Yeah.
right, do you have anything else covered up that you want to promote?
Um, you know, Besides Jacob Beats Up Nate, like I said, I'm taking a little bit of time. I was in St. Louis doing that movie, and I'm excited for that one to come out. It was a great time working on it. It was, a comedy, but there's also a very serious message,
Yeah,
to the movie as well, which I'm not going to expound on. I know, like, once they start really promoting it,
yeah,
when it'll come out next year, I think that, I think that it's going to be something big, something good for St. Louis too. But we had Lamorne Morris, we had Notori Naughton, Justin Long, Frankie Faison, Penny Gerald, Seth Carr. We have our newcomer Joylyn Bass, who's playing jazz. I think she's probably going to be our breakout star. We also have Jay Lee, who was our writer, director,
yeah,
producer.
right,
He's also acting in the movie. We
right.
have you, Lacey. You know, so yeah, Alicia Renee.
Yeah.
We
Oh,
have
yeah.
so
Salute
many
to it.
great people that were a part of it. So I was really really happy to be a part of it. So, but I had so you had mentioned it before,
Mhm.
um about how you got your part in the movie.
Uh-huh.
Uh-huh.
Well, I'm gonna have to tell you that off. Like I'm gonna tell you that off screen.
Yeah, but no. No, I think with Jay Lee, right? Because he's a native of St. Louis,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
And he lives in
yeah,
LA now. And the
yeah,
story is loosely, I'm not gonna say
yeah,
loosely, it is based on his experience, coming from St. Louis, living there, moving to LA, kind of, making it there, and then coming back home and dealing with some of the same things that he dealt with, as a child. So I think that one of the things that he wanted to do, he really wanted to make it very St. Louis, right?
yes,
And
fact.
so, bringing you into it,
Now, look, let
that's
me.
it.
I tell you, I'd told this on the interview before, so I tell you. So look, I was minding my business on a Sunday. I was just watching football, right? By Wednesday, I was acting it. So I just get a text out of nowhere. I ain't even know who it was because like I
Yeah,
said, I write and direct films, and I volunteer and work with a lot of film companies in St. Louis. I'm like friends with her. So I just got a text out of nowhere. They was like, "Would you be interested in acting in this film?" And I was like, "Sure." I ain't even know
yeah,
who it was. So
yeah.
they was like, "Yeah, can you read? We're gonna send you some lines because we're trying to film by Wednesday." So they was like, read these lines and send it back. So I just recorded the audition like man, you is right here.
Yeah.
I sent it back and they was like, oh yeah. We like I showed it to the director. He really loved it, but we want you to read with somebody else off screen. So they was like, can you come an audition tomorrow at Webster University? That's my college, like, at 8 in the morning. And I said to myself, "No, I ain't finna go wait up there just to read those three. Man, y'all finna pick me up that." So look, so I was like, I'm busy. We know which I was because it was like short notice, but I was like, I'm busy. So they was like, all right, cool. They was like, well, can you set a picture facing forward or face to the side? So I said, sure. So I
Yeah.
still wasn't tripping off of it. I'm like, whatever. So the next day I was out eating lunch and I got a call and they was like, yeah, we want to offer you the role of D in this film. So then she passed the phone. She's like, I'm pass the phone to the I forgot who she passed the phone to. And she was like, she gonna tell you more. So all I heard was this. They was like, yeah, we're gonna pay you $810. And all I heard was womp 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 womp. I'm like, 810. But now they was like it was gonna be what she was saying that she was like, he's gonna be SAG eligible and
Yeah.
he was naming a celebrity. I ain't heard at the time, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah.
So Wednesday came and I memorized my lines and Wednesday came and it was just I was like, how did I even get that's my story. I was like, I don't need know how they found me or any of that, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Just
yeah.
got
Because
picked
I
up.
was asking him. I said, I need D. Like D's working in like 2 days. I need to know who it is. I need to talk about their wardrobe. I need to have time to shop for them if I need to shop. Like I need to know who they are. Like it was like came down to the wire, and I'm just
Yeah.
like, oh my gosh. And then they sent me information, and I was like, oh my gosh, he's like perfect.
Did they tell you where they found me at? I still don't listen. I do that. They ain't tell you where they found me at or nothing.
No,
Yeah,
no.
I don't know to this day.
No, no, I don't know. Cause like I said, I think, Jay Lee, he was trying to bring, like, he wanted to bring like not bring, but he wanted more like local talent,
Yes.
in the movie because he really wanted it to like look and feel like very St. Louis. I mean, which I feel like we're shooting in St. Louis. Like
Yeah.
there really
Yeah.
isn't any way
Exactly.
for it not. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
and of course, like our leads, they were come from LA, so of course they're gonna look a little bit different. They're
Yeah.
not gonna
Yeah.
like fit in, so they're gonna stand out, from the rest of everybody else. But I'm like, everybody else was local to St. Louis. They really brought the St. Louis flavor.
Yeah.
So I'm excited for it. I'm
Yeah,
definitely excited.
everybody was saying I did a great job, so I was loving the
Yeah,
crew, the crew, the cast. Everybody was like,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
I enjoyed it. So let me ask you this: let the people know where they can find you at if they want to get in contact with your book, your anything.
Okay. So I do have my website, jaclynbanner.com, JACLYNBANNER.com. I'm also on Instagram under my name. I'm on Facebook under my name. I'm not on TikTok. For some reason, when they shut down, I wasn't able to create my account anymore. So,
They
I'm
hating on you. They hating on you.
they hating on me. You know what I'm saying? It's Trump. It's Trump. No, I'm just kidding.
Yes, it is.
But no, I mean, I spend most of my time on Instagram. I've been so busy for the past few months that I just really haven't been on there as much. But I'm like, now that I have some downtime, I need to go back and do all these photo dumps and, get people caught up on what I've been doing, all year because, primarily costume designer, but I still wardrobe style as well. So I do commercials. I did 2 big commercials earlier this year. One for the Dave app and one for Manjaro that I just got the footage of. So now I can put it up on my website and put it on my social media. But before Jacob Beats Up Nate, I was doing a big Hallmark movie, Hallmark Christmas movie in Kansas City. We did part of it in Nashville, and it's coming out, I think, on November 29th. It's called A Grand Ole Opry Christmas, and that was my first time working on a Hallmark project. I didn't design it; I supervised it, but being that it was a smaller project, I was supervisor, I was ACD, I was shopping, I was doing background, I was doing like wearing many hats. But I got a chance to work with my good friend Lorraine Coppin. She designs a lot of their projects, so that's why I've been in Missouri for the past 3 months. So not sure what's coming up next. I mean, I have some feelers out about some things. I am with an agency, so I'm getting information, almost every other week about what's happening. That's why I feel positive that the beginning of the year is going to be a lot more busy for the country. And I think that with Missouri having their tax credit, I think that, you are going to start to see some more projects come that way. And hopefully I'll be back there again soon.
Look, Jack. Look, look. If you ever you need a PA, you need somebody put the word in for me. I promise they gonna love it. They ain't gonna come back with nothing bad to say about me. They gonna be like
Look,
that is the greatest person you referred ever.
okay, look, and you're a director, so you need a designer. You know what I'm
Listen,
saying?
I got you for real. Look, I said next year I'm gonna really raise funding for this movie I've been wanting to shoot. You know, I'm friends with all
Okay.
these celebrities now, so I'm gonna make them play cameos. So I'm definitely gonna be reaching out to you for real.
You better, you better. I know. I mean, I've looked at your at your channel. I'm just like, wow, like you have talked to some of everybody. That's amazing. And so when you came on the movie, I didn't even know this about you. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I didn't. I didn't. Then when you reached out and said that you want to interview, I'm like, oh, absolutely. You know.
I
So
appreciate you. I appreciate you. All
yeah.
right. So my last question that I always love
Okay.
to ask all my guests. All right.
Uh-oh.
When it is all said and done, and you are long gone from this earth, what is it
Mm.
that you want the people to know about Jaclyn Banner?
Wow, that's a good one. I want the people to know that Jaclyn Banner was that girl, that she was a kind-hearted soul, funny. I'm silly. I'm so silly. I know that a lot of people don't feel that about me. They think that I'm just like this bougie girl. I don't know where they get that from. I do like the finer things in life.
Amen.
Um, but I'm very humble. I'm very down to earth. You know, I want people to remember, like I said, that I was that girl and that I was a great costume designer, and not just a black costume designer, but a great costume designer.
All right.
And that I love my family and that I love God.
All right. There you go. Now drop the
Yeah.
mic. Bam. There you go. Well, thank you, Miss Jaclyn. Look, I appreciate you. Even when, like I said, when I even met you, you know, as we was doing the wardrobe and everything, you always been nice and just getting to learn more about you right now. I definitely appreciate you. You're
Oh,
amazing, woman, for real.
thank you.
No
Thank you.
problem.
Thank you
So
for
I would
having me.
definitely go ahead.
No, I said just thank you for having me. I appreciate this.
No problem at all. So I would definitely let you know when I write this article and publish it and everything. So once again, keep on grinding, keep on doing your thing. You are a great wardrobe designer.
Thank you. Costume designer.
My back. Hold on. Let me rephrase that. You are a great costume designer. You already know it, Jaclyn.
Yeah.
All right. You have a rest of a good day, and I will definitely be back in touch.
Okay, sounds good.
All right. Bye bye.
Bye.